Black women should lower their heads and weep. Why are you upright? The patrolman snarled, aiming a pistol at a black woman during a funeral. He barked orders, pinning her among wreaths. No cause, only skin. He misjudged everything. He didn't know the woman before him was General Alexis Moreland, mid-50s, revered across the Pentagon. This time, the law would honor honor. When a uniform masks fear, who names justice? What state shelters you? Arlington awoke veiled in mist. Flags drooped at half-staff in the early March breeze. Boots on brittle grass sliced the hush like a knife through taut silk. Rows of black draped chairs awaited a family stiff with grief, eyes fixed on a flag-wrapped casket. Children wore tiny uniforms, adults squared medals. Silence ruled. This was a military funeral, sacred, where personal sorrow yielded to a single sovereign. Honor. No coughs, no whispers, only ritual breath, practiced and spare, holding everything upright without visible strain. A black SUV drifted through a side gate. The rear door opened. Polished shoes touched earth. Guards saluted instinctively. The woman stepping out wore a general's stars, earned by years beyond conscience. She carried a small urn wrapped in black. Alexis Moreland arrived without entourage or noise, only the urn meant to rest beside a fallen comrade's casket. Her face was cool, eyes steady. Silence in her stride made onlookers rise, then not from fear, but recognition. A general came to honor. One man didn't stand. Officer Brett Kincaid, perimeter security chief, slapped the SUV's hood hard, jarring the solemnity. Wood thudded as a young flag bearer flinched, dropping his pole. The cemetery froze. A child whispered, "Is he yelling at her?" The mother bowed, saying nothing. Her fingers cinched mourning cloth to keep composure from splitting. Alexis stared from Kincaid's reddened palm to his concrete gray eyes. She didn't step back. He blocked her path, contempt pooling, daring her rank to matter. "I thought you belonged with the choir," he sneered, eyeing her insignia like a cheap souvenir, not a general's stars. Guards traded glances, but stayed still. Moreland opened her wallet, displayed her ID with textbook precision, calm as a winter lake. He didn't take it, just glanced. "They make these really well now, especially for folks proving something." A murmur, clenched teeth, or a choked sob rippled. Alexis tucked the ID away, stepped closer to the casket. Kincaid blocked again. Restricted zone. Unauthorized. An older veteran, a former captain, whispered, "Are we burying a soldier or burying honor?" The question barely traveled, striking hidden nerves. No one intervened. People weighed whether the system would stand with them. Wind dimmed. The flag settled like prayer. Moreland didn't move. Her shoes paused within one pace of Kincaid's. No rage, just icy refusal, a stillness sharper than scorn. He flinched, then steadied. "I can ask, you don't get to answer. Without command authorization, you're out. Stars aren't shields." He claimed to protect honor while glaring at her ribbons, believing none. A sigh evaporated along the burial line. The flag bearer recovered his pole. A child watched, sensing a rightful presence being pushed aside. Moreland held the urn like memory. She didn't plead, didn't ask permission. She stood, a living boundary in a funeral cleaved by prejudice, authority, and fear of someone like her occupying hallowed space. The moment congealed around a hand unfit to hold a gun. Truth grew louder. Moreland's silence hardened. Kincaid mistook composure for defiance. He lunged half a step, yanked the ID with a crude tug that rattled her jacket hem. He flicked it in sunlight, examining like counterfeit cash, then spat beside her polished shoes. Everything locked. The ceremonial squad's boot cadence halted mid-step. Suspicion curdled into intent. A young white private leaned forward, about to speak. His sergeant's hand pressed his shoulder gently. "Not yet." In uniform, that meant consequences, not cowardice. Kincaid still held her ID, tilting it like a pawnshop trinket. "Good fakes. Baltimore, Chicago. People buy them to matter. especially when they can't earn rank. His words scraped like leather on sand. Nearby journalism students quietly started live streaming the confrontation. The phone angle caught Kincaid's face, the ID, the urn, and Moreland's unwavering gaze. The 4G signal lagged, but within minutes, the clip hit a military forum under a burning caption, Cop Grills 4-star at funeral. Alexis said nothing, hauntingly. She stepped close, breath distance, voice lowered, sharpened. You're not doubting plastic. You're doubting that someone like me belongs to it. No thunder, only verbal ice. He faltered, not shame, but shock at a blow delivered without heat or theatrics. He clung to protocol, insisting ID doesn't prove identity. Verification belonged to him, unfinished. The trap wasn't for her alone. It dragged ceremony into his personal mud. Phones rose, not to call, but to record humiliation, dressed as official caution. She reached. He held her ID a heartbeat longer, thirsty for the last drop of control. Then she pulled decisively. Metal tapped her nail, clear as a blade. She turned away, leaving him open-mouthed. A notification buzzed. Cop vs. General, 120,000 watching. No orders, no slogans. The mother in the front row stood, stepped toward the casket. She didn't look at Kincaid. She met Moreland's eyes and nodded, as if closing one ritual and opening the one honor required. The funeral's real story shifted. Moreland advanced, neither hurried nor hesitant, boots grounding cracked earth, carrying the urn steady as a vow. Each breath drew a line. Each step asked, who truly has the right to approach? Kincaid growled, voice dragging like chains. Stop! Now! His hand found the grip. Sudden metal scraping the silence raw. The sound didn't belong here. Everyone heard, no one believed. Moreland held her ground, the muzzle leveled at her chest. The casket's flag fluttered once, like honor refusing to bow. One more move and it's a threat, he hissed, arms locked. The cemetery held its breath, no speaking, no movement, waiting to see not what happened, but whom the system would hold responsible. He screamed, "Stop!" so loud the portrait tumbled, shattering. The fallen soldier's photo rolled to Moreland's shoes. A lieutenant shouted, "Everyone back!" No one moved because stepping away would concede that a cop could pull a gun in a military cemetery, and none would stand against it. A colonel stepped aside. He looked at the casket, not Kincaid, remembering why he'd come. To say goodbye, not to bless a drawn weapon. Moreland didn't bend to the photo. A bowed head might be misconstrued forever. She kept the urn upright, mountain between violence and honor. She met Kincaid's eyes. If I die here, the country will know why. Heartbeats misfired. It wasn't a threat, it was testimony. His hand stayed firm, his gaze broke. A boy whispered, "Mom, is he scared of her?" The question pierced pretenses. The breeze lifted the flag edge like a scar in morning black. In this place, guns weren't meant to exist, yet one did, and only a woman's unbending posture stood between it and irreversibility. No one screamed. The frame needed no captions. It stopped being cop versus general. It became honor versus privilege. One prepared to endure, one prepared to fire. Between them lay a soldier's death and justice's thin survival. Wind ceased. The flag stilled. Cracks beneath Moreland's boots felt tectonic. Her gaze was on the photo, lying between muzzle and commander. Breaths went unheard. Pressure rose anyway. A silver-haired 3-star to her left leaned on his cane, hand trembling. A tear rolled, not fear, but shame for his generation's long silence. "Don't," he whispered to no one. "As long as you stand, we might still save the system." Old, not weak, not pleading, simply judging his era. The cracks weren't bullets. They were permissions granted to the wrong hands, spread across decades. Moreland heard but didn't turn. Her eyes stayed fixed where honor shredded beneath a gun. In the military, not everyone aims. No one aims at sacrifice. Kincaid's jaw tightened. Sweat traced backward over his temple, realizing the silence no longer obeyed him. A drone hummed above, lens trained on his face in slow, deliberate focus, etching sweat, twitch, profile into permanence. He couldn't aim at it or silence it. He stood like a crime not yet named, exposed by 1,000 unblinking eyes. Behind the honor guard, a young soldier unzipped a pack and lifted a backup flag. Insurance never prepared unless someone expects ritual to break. That word, backup, said enough. The unit had prepared for honor to be interrupted, twice if needed. Moreland adjusted her heel, then set it back where it was. Not retreat, not advance, holding, her urn steady. Her chest rode, with medals pinned by 3 presidents. But what rooted her was chosen. Principle, not praise. Kincaid's voice thinned. Afraid. You're provoking me. If I feel threatened, I have the right to respond. His line fell like an unspent shell, useless on impact. The older general turned away, unable to watch a man insist a funeral justified his fear. Integrity choked, dust thickened, every particle heavy. A dry leaf settled by Moreland's shoe. Time still moved. The system didn't. A distant horn sounded, ignored. Witnesses understood. Today's next page wouldn't be written by press or politicians, but by those present. They would carry this, how a gun appeared before a casket, how a general was barred from approaching a soldier. They would raise children differently. Silence was imprinting them. Kincaid scanned faces for permission. None came. Shoulders sagged. Authority unraveling. A soft click. Military security unlatched weapons. 2 officers in ballistic vests moved in, hands proper, voices measured. Drop your weapon, command cadence. Final, non-negotiable. Kincaid scoffed. Political cosplay. You think this is a movie? Silence answered. No longer reaction, but judgment. They disarmed and cuffed him with practiced ease. He realized, too late, guns don't belong at military funerals. He lifted his chin, stared at Moreland. I know who you are. Exactly. She didn't look up. He left like a hollow statue. No boos, no applause, no pity. The silence was heavy and shared. Shame settled. Why didn't we stop this sooner? Moreland stayed with the urn, eyes forward, the broken photo at her feet. The soldier's smile survived inside shattered glass. No one picked it up, learning to face consequences of silence. A white-haired World War II veteran rose, cane tapping stone thrice, echoes ringing like bells. Today, morality turns a page. Heads bowed, not to him, but to truth laid bare. Faces fractured like mirror shards, flushed shut, composed. Everyone understood they'd helped shape an indelible moment. 1 second to draw a weapon, where only drums, flags, grief belong. No talk of suspension or mistakes. No pledges to investigate. Evidence breathed. The ceremony resumed. Honor guard reset formation. A new frame replaced the shattered portrait. Motions followed script, but faith in sacred space had cracked, not by a bullet, but by permission extended too long. A mother clenched, a folded flag. The boy beside her asked no more questions, fingers creasing cloth. The volley fired, precise, cold, slicing silence like blades. What lingered wasn't ritual, but what preceded it. 1 second to lose everything, 1 second to reveal rot tolerated. Moreland's stillness forced the system to choose, complicity or reckoning. 1 hour later, the country flinched. Within 6 hours, America asked the same question. Who is she? Her name, face, and records surfaced, not uncovered by media, but unearthed inevitability. General Alexis Moreland, first Black woman to command 3 strategic combat units, held at gunpoint at a military funeral. She once led a nighttime rescue of 18 Americans from a Kandahar prison, including a Virginia senator's son who opposed diversity. A photo resurfaced, Moreland kneeling under fire, bandaging a panicked private, front page under. A general faced a gun. America Stan's trial. No sensationalism needed. Facts chilled. She led 5 cross-border operations and survived an ambush in Iraq. She returned with 3 wounded slung across her back. Twice she declined promotion to keep ground command over a Pentagon desk. Her name trended on forums, Reddit, Twitter, not about politics, only how could this happen to someone like her? Why couldn't anyone stop it? Funeral Glockgate surged within 7 hours. A veteran wrote, "Never seen our military disgraced like this, or a general absorb humiliation with so much honor." A war correspondent recalled Moreland's voice steadying troops in Mosul. A conservative senator defended Kincaid's protocol verification, claiming every perceived risk merits action. He didn't expect his Navy officer's son, stationed in Hawaii, to tweet at midnight, "Dad, she pulled me out of a minefield. Stop defending the indefensible." Debate thinned. A general, a gun, a nation learning the cost of borrowed power. Foreign press weighed in. Le Monde called it a slap to American pride. The Guardian saw surreal combat between politics and dignity. The question persisted. Who is she? She didn't speak. 36 hours silent. No press, no statement. She filed one document with the Department of Justice. "I will testify as a witness, not a victim." No lawyers requested. One sentence, enough to pivot the country toward law. The DOJ responded within 6 hours. A clipped release. Unwarranted armed force by a police officer within a national military ceremonial zone under investigation for human rights violation and desecration. No briefing. Key words rang like alarms. Unwarranted, desecration, federal. For the first time, overreach wasn't in a civilian street, but charged inside the military's most sacred space. From within the force, more severity. Over 35 active generals petitioned for public proceedings to defend the institution's moral boundary transparently. A retired 4-star wrote privately to the Chief Justice, "Those who served under Moreland know what's tested. This isn't personal honor. It's national legitimacy." The other side assembled counsel. Kincaid hired a lawyer notorious from January Capitol defendants. At his press conference, the attorney didn't apologize. He declared duty justifies authority when security is perceived at risk. No one can disprove my client's fear. Not defensive action, defensive feeling, a razor argument in emotive times. Veterans coalitions issued a rare joint letter. "Don't turn justice into political rehearsal. We don't care about party lines. We care that a funeral became rank desecration. If that's tolerable, the system forfeits legitimacy." Pressure mounted, deliberate, relentless. A leaked pre-funeral security huddle surfaced. A voice alleged Kincaid's, "If any colored person enters the ceremonial line off list, I'll teach them there and then." The clip spread in hours. The Attorney General answered, "I care," why he thought he could. Public outrage shifted to resolve. Moreland remained quiet, except to the Assistant U.S. Attorney. "I didn't come to be defended. I came to see whether justice stands when no threat is attached." The indictment followed. 5 counts, each like a hammer. Charges: weapon use in a federally protected ceremonial zone, racially motivated threat, abuse of authority, obstruction of military rights, desecration of a national service member's dignity, the last carrying potential life without parole. Hearings ordered fully public. Federal Courtroom 3 in D.C. was designated. Records preserved in full, jury insulated from interference. The law shed choice and took up duty. No soothing apology after guns meet uniforms at graves. Consequences would speak plainly, not ceremonially. Away from courts, a letter traveled from rural Missouri. A mother's hand in blue ink. Ruth Darrow, whose son Staff Sergeant Miles Darrow died on the Syrian border, wrote, "My son died for America. America didn't keep its promise at his funeral." Not an accusation. Soft, piercing, precise. "He told me, 'If I die, ask General Moreland to say a few words.' They wouldn't let her near him." That line shook the media. A friend shared a diary page, stained with sand and sweat. Miles had written, "If something happens to me, I want Ms. Moreland to speak." Her voice over gunfire kept me from panicking. No scriptwriter could manufacture that. No justification could defend a drawn pistol, blocking her approach to his casket. At St. Mark's Church in Georgia, the Darrows Parish held a prayer service, not for mourning, but for guarding living honor. A hand-painted banner read, "We pray for the values that once steadied this nation, not to regain, but not to forget." No TV trucks, no dignitaries. 40 mostly aging veterans knelt at wooden pews. No one named Moreland aloud. No condemnations. Their eyes agreed silently. This must not pass like the others. The presiding priest, Father Rowan Ellis, was invited afterward. He declined blessing the local police department. I can't bless a place that pointed a gun at honor. A small refusal, withdrawn grace. Public fury became current. Veterans reorganized gatherings, not about campaigns, but dignity. Stories surfaced like clean scars. An old New Mexico soldier said, "I've seen comrades die of thirst, never saw a general barred from her soldier." The incident stopped resembling a suit. It became a generational reckoning. Witnesses handwrote accounts, expressions, blood pressure spikes, small trembling details. Academics called it slow accumulated moral reaction. A society forced awake because honor isn't abstract, it's an urn being kept from its rightful place. On Black service member forums, a slogan spread, "We've been waiting too long." It needed no footnote. Silence around Kincaid didn't last. People who weaponize authority against honor always leave tracks. 7 days post-indictment, leaks from his department emerged. Among the dense paperwork, one 2012 complaint in his own hand, addressed to Military District 7 Fort Bragg. He'd been rejected, not physically unfit, but psychologically screened out. He underlined, "This unit favors black soldiers." The handwritten margin read, "If someone like me isn't allowed to serve, people like them don't deserve to be called soldiers." No one answered then, but Arlington's flash made people read backward. Roots weren't clerical, they were ideological. Someone denied honor, trying to reclaim status by stripping it from those who embodied it. An older documentary clip showed him. When the game's rigged, breaking rules feels inevitable. Asked to clarify, he said, "If I wasn't chosen to be among them, I'll guard the gate." At the time, few grasped it. Now, paired with a gun drawn at a funeral, the line read like blueprint, not bluster. Resentment turned policy. His psychological assessment's single line, damaged value system, uncontrollable responses toward individuals surpassing his criteria. Not diagnosis, narrative. He didn't hate losing, he hated winners he believed advanced. By roots he refused to accept. Investigators found a dark notebook at home. 4 red words, sealed inside. "I will take back." Same script as his 2012 complaint margin. Behavioral analysts called it cultivated grievance, nurtured, sharpened. Colleagues recalled patrol days. Whenever a black commander supervised, he'd mutter about politics climbing faster than bullets. Patterns clarified. Not a man pushed into error, but one waiting for an opening. Irony put it in a cemetery. Monday morning, Federal Courtroom 3. No phones, no tie adjusting, no coughs. The room held a nation's gaze. Mirror finally unclouded. General Moreland entered, not posing, not scanning cameras. She walked like someone who'd crossed sand under fire. Crisp uniform, 4 stars gleaming. Full medals. Not for drama, but to anchor substance in a distracted age. Blood-bought words aren't rewritten lightly. She raised her hand to swear. The clerk read her name, age, rank. Invited to sit, she said, "I'll stand." Not loud, just unarguable. Today she wouldn't sit in a courtroom where injustice had too often been the one standing. Kincaid's attorney, Clive Markham, 50's gaunt, blade smile, approached without a question. "Wearing your uniform today so people forget you were the one hurt?" She didn't bristle. "I wear the uniform because the one I'll speak about no longer can." He pressed, "Are you here as a witness or a political symbol?" She unbuttoned her jacket, set a small box on the stand. A Purple Heart, awarded quietly. "I've bled. I nearly died. I left a part of myself behind. I need no pity." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Moreland didn't read notes. "I'm not here to list battles. I'm here because someone drew a gun in our most sacred space and pointed it at the person who kept Americans alive behind enemy lines. I've been ambushed by the Taliban. I lost part of my arm to a mine. I'd never had a gun pointed at me until I wore my uniform on American soil." Silence thickened. No one dared pretend coincidence or ignorance. A white woman juror exhaled. Not fear, understanding. They wouldn't judge mere right or wrong. They'd decide whether enough honor remained to call the verdict justice. Markham tried again. "Some say you're being used, emotions swaying law." She tilted her head. "Or what emotion?" "The public's anger," he said. "If they're angry," she answered, "they're angry for me. I don't have time to be angry. I'm busy standing, so they don't have to bow to a system already collapsed." Truth stood alone. The room quieted further. No camera clicks. Paper rustles swallowed. Attention narrowed to two people, 4 steps apart. One in uniform, spine straight. One in jail orange, wrists chained, eyes hardened by long resentment. The judge called the confrontation forward. Kincaid spoke first, smiling crookedly. "Real combat vets don't flinch at a Glock that hasn't fired." Moreland unfolded an aged Afghanistan map, original tactical chart, edges rain gnawed. She marked Kunduz, ambushed, lost contact 3 days, no reinforcements, 6 extracted alive. "One was Senator Klein's son, the man who later argued against prosecuting you." No gasp, just a moral tremor. Kincaid chuckled, glass scraping steel. "So you can shoot, but can't tolerate being targeted. Amusing." Breath held, not at wit, but shamelessness. She didn't flinch. "I don't refuse being targeted. I refuse to bow." Not a rebuttal, a verdict, past the defendant, toward anyone believing honor yields to a curled trigger finger. The lawyer started up. The judge's look told him to sit. Moreland walked to the evidence podium, lifting a printout of Kincaid's 2012 complaint. "This surprised me most," she told the jury. "He didn't draw because I was dangerous. He drew because he didn't believe I deserved the uniform he never qualified to wear." She finally looked at him, not with contempt, not with heat. "That wasn't just a gun. It was a hand that never had the right to hold it." She bowed, not submission, but report complete, and stepped down, needing no validation, only daylight. No one clapped, no winners, just clarity. This trial wasn't about the man who drew a weapon. It was about those who refused mirrors. Kincaid entered power not for honor, but to be feared. He wasn't competence. He was notoriety. He learned to slip through cracks, armor made from disdain. Newsrooms initially spotlighted his staring contest with Moreland. Then they dug dusted corners and found something larger, a system waving him through. One leak detonated. An elementary school camera, 2016. A leaked hallway camera from Randall Elementary, North Carolina, 2016, exploded online overnight. The grainy clip showed Officer Brett Kincaid shoving a black father during dismissal, muttering slurs off mic. No charges then. Today, the footage read like prophecy. Audio engineers enhanced the file. His mouth shaped words that needed little imagination. Administrators had smoothed it over as a miscommunication. Parents remembered otherwise. Permission granted. Deference demanded. Arlington reframed the archive. Not an outburst, but a trajectory unfolding in daylight. Editors stitched a timeline. Complaints ignored. Counseling waived. Transfers masked as professional fit. Glowing evaluations when supervisors rotated. The pattern wasn't random. It was institutional muscle memory. Kincaid wasn't a freak storm. He was prevailing weather, pressure built by neglect. Reporters called former colleagues. Off-record voices sketched a man who worshipped the badge yet despised boundaries, a stickler for paperwork when it protected him, allergic to oversight when it constrained him. He didn't bend rules, one said. He sharpened them. A civic panel convened, televised without spin. Prosecutors, chiefs, chaplains, union reps, a Gold Star mother. The room agreed on little except this: power detests empty chairs. When good people stay seated, ambition with a gun stands up. The union's spokesperson cited contract clauses, a chaplain quoted conscience, a prosecutor recited statutes like liturgy. Viewers felt something shift, less outrage, more resolve. Arguments no longer floated, they landed. The lesson sounded simple, stubborn. Sacred spaces need guardians, not gatekeepers. Meanwhile, the courtroom's weekly docket moved like iron rails. No drumbeat, no breaking graphic, just dates and filings. Each motion scraped another thin layer from Kincaid's defenses, revealing not strategy but habit, how he treated procedure like camouflage, not covenant. The judge refused theatrics. She spoke sparingly, noting where policy failed, where supervision blinked. "We will try conduct," she said, "and by necessity, the culture that allowed it to ripen." The sentence carried a ballast the room could feel. A whistleblower surfaced. Records clerk, 12 years. She described evaluation drafts massaged before signature, complaints relabeled performance coaching, flags folded into mentorship. She wasn't bitter, she was precise. Her dates lined with emails. Her folders tabs matched ledger entries. Defense tried discrediting her with a stale reprimand. It backfired. She'd reported herself for a filing error. Jurors recognized the posture. Accountability. Severe enough to sting, honest enough to trust. The ledger didn't accuse alone. It illuminated a corridor. Military families began writing essays, handheld camera plane, uploaded without monetization. Rituals don't protect themselves, one wrote. People protect them. Another, if the uniform doesn't shield dignity at gravesides, it's costume. They weren't trending. They were sediment, settling, weighty, unavoidable. A theologian turned captain penned a line passed between bases. Reverence is a practice, not a place. Cadets annotated it like scripture. Arlington had proved a paradox. Hallowed ground can be violated by footsteps that swear they're defending it. Kincaid's lawyer pivoted hard to perception. He felt unsafe, he repeated, sanding every edge down to dread. The tactic glittered in headlines, dulled under oath. Fear without evidence is superstition. Paired with a gun, it's policy disguised as impulse. Moreland reappeared only for depositions. She never gave speeches. She answered cleanly, left promptly, walked past microphones like they were potholes. Her absence everywhere else became presence, an outline so steady commentators stopped projecting and started listening to the record. The Senate scheduled hearings, ritual and oversight braided, generals testified without flourish. One presented an empty chair draped in black cloth, reserved for the fallen. He faced the committee. No badge outranks this seat. Cameras didn't blink, neither did he. A colonel described the funeral drill. Timings, lanes, clearances, so detailed viewers felt the procession in their feet. "Movement has meaning," he said. "You don't interrupt meaning with fear." A staff sergeant added softly, "Our dead teach the living to behave." Clips of Moreland training lieutenants resurfaced. Calm instruction under pressure. Breathe. Check. Act. Civilians adopted the cadence. Parents repeated it during homework meltdowns. Medics murmured it during triage. A conductor posted it backstage. Discipline traveled places salutes never reach. Defense's polling expert charted outrage fatigue curves. The graph sagged politely. Then Ruth Darrow's letter spiked anew, less viral than vascular, threaded through families, kitchens, pews. Her single sentence kept pulsing. "You didn't keep your promise at his funeral." A policy memo leaked. Draft revisions to ceremonial security protocols. Clear language replaced euphemism. Lines that once read operator discretion now read prohibited. Training hours doubled. A new clause. Ritual precedence supersedes civilian agitation. It sounded archaic, it read necessary. Police academies invited chaplains and buglers. One instructor said, "We're teaching thresholds. Some places change who you are." Trainees practiced walking slow in rooms with folded flags, learning that restraint is muscle memory too. A recruit cried and didn't apologize. On base, cadets debated courage. Is standing still braver than charging? A TAC officer shrugged. Depends who's pointing the weapon. They wrote essays on negative space, what you refused to do, becoming the loudest action. The syllabus felt newly alive. The drone pilot who filmed Kincaid testified, hobbyist, nurse by day. His footage stayed steady because his hands had learned steadiness beside hospital beds. I wasn't chasing drama, he said. I wanted a record no one could edit emotionally. Prosecutors showed frame by frame, hand to grip, draw, muzzle line, not cinematic, topographical. Jurors leaned forward, following a terrain of choices. Each inch mattered. Each pause preached. The weapon was a paragraph. The silences around it were thesis statements. Kincaid finally testified. His voice had the dull confidence of practiced grievance. He spoke of losing ground without losing anything. He mentioned respect while trampling it. He described protocol like a talisman. The jury heard incantations, not instructions. He insisted he never saw the urn. Photos glowed behind him, urn in both hands, center frame. I saw a threat, he repeated monotone. The repetition sounded like a wall, high, brittle, echoing only itself. Walls without doors eventually split. He claimed he feared a rush. Prosecutors replayed Moreland's heel lift back to place. 37 witnesses called it stillness. Do you fear stillness? The AUSA asked. He stared into the table's wood grain, looking for a grain that agreed. Outside, protesters thinned, then thickened, then steadied. No chance left, just watchfulness. They stood in deliberate quiet, like sentries at a tomb. A veteran in a wheelchair carried a sign. Honor's weight is easier to carry than dishonor's excuse. A museum curated an exhibit in real time. Rituals, authority, permission. Visitors walked a taped lane, paused by a casket draped in simulated stars. Speakers played measured silence. On a wall, some rooms require proof you can be quiet. A think tank proposed an oath for civilian officers entering military grounds, 2 sentences long, recited aloud. Unions balked. Veterans shrugged. We recite longer to check out a canteen. The proposal didn't solve anything. It simply held the door open. Meanwhile, the young private who'd flinched at the hood slap asked to testify. He described shame, not fear. I wanted to move. I didn't. That's mine to carry. His honesty lifted something invisible. Responsibility, shared, becomes instruction rather than indictment. The sergeant who steadied him spoke next. Not yet doesn't mean never. It means wait for the moment you can help. He looked at Moreland, eyes bright. She taught me that, not with speeches, with posture. The jury wrote vigorously. Media outlets tried pitting camps again. The algorithm preferred spectacle. The footage refused to comply. There was no brawl, only comparisons of composure, of choices, of what uniforms symbolize when worn well, and what badges become when worn poorly. In closing, the prosecution didn't thunder. They read the charges slowly, mapping each to evidence, then paused at the last count. Dignity, desecration. We're not polishing marble, the AUSA said. We're deciding whether granite means anything when names are carved. Defense invoked doubt like incense, thick enough to sting eyes, too thin to nourish. If he felt threatened, Markham repeated. Jurors glanced at the map, the urn, the drone frames, the boy's question. Feeling detached from fact is not law. The judge instructed crisply. Elements, burdens, definitions, then added what sounded like a footnote carved in oak. This courtroom addresses actions taken, not status threatened. The sentence landed like a keel. You could feel the room stabilize around it. Deliberations began. Hours crawled. The hallway murmured with paper cups and muted prayers. Moreland waited in an anteroom, standing, hands folded loosely. Her aide offered a chair. She smiled. "I'll sit when ritual sits." The aide understood immediately. Verdicts returned, count by count. The air felt like it could bruise. On the final charge, a juror's voice wavered, then steadied. Guilty. No cheers, no gasps. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was relief arriving on foot. Kincaid sagged, then snapped upright, looking for a fixed point. None waited for him. The deputy touched his elbow. Professional, unpunishing. Markham gathered folders with the speed of someone who'd practiced leaving without dramatics. The door closed like punctuation. Outside, the mother and boy stood together. He didn't ask another question. She didn't offer answers. They watched a flag stir and settle. Grief doesn't end at verdict. It simply knows where to place its hands without trembling. The Attorney General declined victory language. "Accountability," he said, "is maintenance." The word sounded unglamorous. It stuck. You maintain engines, roofs, honor. Let anyone rot and storms merely finish what neglect began. Maintenance is not optional. It's civilization's chore. Base chapels filled quietly that week. No televised vigils, just low voices. A chaplain preached 5 words: "Do the slow, faithful thing." Cadets nodded, understanding that speed had misled them often. Faithfulness, not fury, holds ritual's doors against weather. The clerk whistleblower returned to work. Same desk, same bulb, new locks on evidence cabinets. She labeled boxes with heavier verbs: preserved, retained, audited. A coworker brought coffee. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm fine." It meant the record will endure. At Arlington, groundskeepers repaired divots left by that day's boots and wheels. Grass doesn't argue, it heals. A caretaker straightened a small stone the wind had tilted. He whispered a name carved there, then moved on to the next. Moreland visited the Darrows in Georgia, unannounced, unfilmed. She sat at their kitchen table, listened more than spoke, then read aloud from Miles's diary. Her voice softened on his jokes, steadied on his fears. They laughed once and didn't apologize. Before leaving, she stepped into the yard, saluted the sky, then nodded at Ruth. No assurances, no platitudes, just ballast, woman to mother, soldier to witness. Some gestures don't resolve pain. They reframe it into something carryable, like folded cloth. Back in Washington, cadets studied the case not as scandal, but curriculum, ethics, operations, ceremony. They wrote after-action memos on silence, when it protects, when it betrays. One line repeated: honor hates shortcuts. Instructors left it on the board. The judge released a written opinion, spare, meticulous, citing doctrine, precedent, the special character of ceremonial zones. It read like carpentry: joints measured, surfaces trued, load-bearing explained. You could build on it. That was the point. Others would have to. Moreland returned to work. Her staff noticed nothing different, except the doorway felt narrower when she walked in, gravity adjusting. She required no retinue, only schedules. "We're behind on training hours," she said. A captain smiled. The most normal sentence imaginable. She sent handwritten notes to witnesses, never using templates. "Thank you for telling the truth plainly." To the private, "Courage returns. Call it back." To the sergeant, "Timing isn't caution, it's care." To the clerk, "Paper saved people today." A historian filed the episode under civil-military relations, case study for cadets not yet born. He listed its parts: drone, urn, boy's question, judge's sentence, priest's refusal, mother's line. He titled it "When Standing Still Moved, Everything That Needed Moving." Policy meetings turned practical. Budget lines for training, clauses with teeth, liaisons between agencies. Less rhetoric, more checklists, Someone said, "This feels small." A sergeant replied, "Stitches always do, until the wound closes." The room grew quiet, then kept working. On a park bench, the World War II veteran tapped his cane once, then twice, then 3 times. Habit now. He watched a color guard practice across the green. Precision carried soundlessly, like a promise. He smiled into the wind. The boy in the miniature uniform slept, with a folded scarf beside his bed. He dreamed not of salutes or rifles, but of doors opening when people arrived bearing dignity. In the morning, he asked his mother to visit Arlington. They went on Sunday. He brought wildflowers, placed them gently, then stood back exactly 3 steps, as he'd seen soldiers do. "Why 3?" he asked. "Respect needs space," she answered. He nodded, solemn and 7, learning measurement without rulers. Journalism students uploaded a final cut, steady, almost plain. No music, no captions, just time unfolding. Their professor wrote beneath it, "We tell the truth at the speed truth requires." Views climbed slowly, the way trust climbs, step, breath, glance, proof. A new recruit visited the museum exhibit, lingered at the taped lane, then texted his mother, "I learned how to walk today." She wrote back a heart. He stared at the empty chair draped black, then practiced stillness. A city police chief gathered her command staff. "We made fear into policy," she said. "We're unmaking it." Some bristled. She didn't flinch. "If you need a slogan, use this. Don't point weapons at rituals." It sounded absurd until necessary. At West Point, cadets debated whether reverence can be taught. A philosophy instructor answered, "We teach posture until it becomes belief." A plebe replied, "And belief becomes posture again." The room felt like a gym, sweatless, but muscles forming anyway. A brass foundry shipped new nameplates for benches near the tomb. One was inscribed, "For those who stood when retreat seemed reasonable." Tourists sat without knowing. Veterans read, then rose. The sentence felt like a hand at the shoulder. A podcast interviewed the drone nurse. She described heart rhythms calming under steadiness. "We learn to press gently where the bleeding is." The host asked if that's policing too. "It's everything," she said. "Pressure where needed, space where sacred." Moreland walked the cemetery alone at dusk. No cameras, no aides, just names arranged into a geography of debts. She paused at fresh ground, touched the frame's new glass. In reflection, a woman in uniform stood smaller than the sky. She whispered a sentence no one heard, because it belonged to one soldier only. Then she set her palm over the carved letters. The way you steady a picture on a wall that holds the room together without applause. Her phone buzzed. Policy draft approval. She exhaled, not victorious, simply relieved. Maintenance had begun. While leaving, she passed a bugler, practicing alone. A missed note cracked the air, then the next rang true. He nodded, started again, improved. Reporters eventually chased other storms. That's fine. This one settled into doctrine and drill, places headlines rarely visit. The work that endures prefers fluorescent lights anyway. Someone has to inventory the bolts before bridges forget how to hold. Kincaid's appeal filed, stamped, calendared. The gears will turn as they must. No one awaited catharsis. The important parts had already happened. In standing, in silence, in corrections written dryly. Justice isn't spectacle. It's scaffolding people stopped noticing. At a small town parade, a color guard paused before a nursing home. Veterans raised shaky hands to temple. Children miscounted steps, giggled, corrected. The drumline softened. Reverence looked ordinary, and won anyway, because ordinariness is how reverence survives winters. A librarian shelved the court transcript beside other thin spines, cases that thickened institutions. She slid a card inside. "Please return better." It was a joke, then a charge. People laughed at checkout, nodded at home, and understood. In a classroom, the journalism students screened their final cut. They kept the drone's slow approach, the heel reset, the handcuffs without jeers. The professor paused on the urn. Your job, she said, is to make the obvious undeniable. The private who flinched finished his tour. Before out-processing, he visited the grave, placed his name tape beneath the flowers, and whispered, I will do better next time. Improvement isn't theater. It's a quiet contract renewed when no one claps. The sergeant took a desk at a training unit, teaching not yet like a navigational star. He framed a still of Moreland holding the urn. Under it, strength is restraint with a reason. Recruits copied it into notebooks. The whistleblower clerk painted her apartment door a stubborn blue. Neighbors noticed. She smiled. Easier to find. She meant easier to knock on when records matter. Ordinary defiance looks like a door you can identify in a hurry. A chaplain blessed a new batch of officers before they stepped onto hallowed ground. He didn't ask for safety. He asked for steadiness. May your hands remember what isn't yours to command. The room exhaled like a congregation learning posture. General Moreland signed travel orders, then tucked Ruth Darrow's letter into her briefcase. Not for talisman, for accountability. She glanced at a calendar, then the map again. Routes, checkpoints, risk. The work ahead looked mercifully ordinary. She welcomed ordinary. He had learned to slip through cracks, armor himself in disdain, and ride loopholes like rails. Newsrooms turned their lights elsewhere, but a last leak glowed. An elementary school camera, North Carolina, 2016, grainy, undeniable, finally framed by everything that followed. In a 2.5-minute clip, Brett Kincaid, then a liaison security officer, restrained a black 10-year-old. The child sobbed, wrists cinched with plastic ties, face down on hot pavement, while Kincaid barked, wandering, refusing ID, not allowed to move. He nudged the boy's calf with his boot, sneered, and radioed, subject breaching restricted zone, request residential verification. The report later read, handled per protocol, no excessive force. Case closed in 3 days. Outrage closed nothing at all. Soon after the resurfaced clip, a former female subordinate appeared on CNN. He slapped me in an elevator for not standing at attention, she said, producing her internal complaint. The file, marked, original missing, unable to verify. She resigned. That departure was her last day in uniform. The final spark came via the Jackson Dispatch, where an amateur reporter unearthed 10 years of review logs, Kincaid's name 8 times, racial remarks, coercion, camera tampering, always counseled or insufficient evidence. No one dared label it protection. Few were naive enough to label it coincidence. That night, a silver-haired Southerner appeared on national TV. I'm George Millstone, once Kincaid's supervisor. He stared into the camera, eyes refusing to blink. I kept him after 3 complaints, Millstone admitted. I thought rough edges still kept order. By not removing him, I greenlit a moral execution. Skeptics cited incomplete procedure. A few outlets muttered self-defense. Truth needed no chorus, only daylight. A consolidated report from the Federal Commission on Executive Ethics followed. Kincaid wasn't an anomaly. He was a product line. Vanished records, hushed witnesses, authority entrusted to hands that never learned how to hold it. Responsibility dispersed. Apologies never named. One conclusion blazed. Kincaid wasn't a misstep. He was the diagram of choices dressed up as order. In court, his grin vanished. Not fear of sentencing, fear of evidence stitched into a net words couldn't slice through. He fell beneath truth's weight, not by verdict, not by mobs, by fragments that survived neglect. Stories once discarded, details everyone saw, no one voiced until silence itself broke. As he staggered, other shadows assembled, soldiers, uncoached, unherded, uninvited. On day 9, while the jury withdrew, more than 100 black veterans co-signed a 4-page declaration. It began without argument. We stayed quiet, believing others would speak. If General Alexis Moreland isn't protected, none of us holds value. They did not plead, accuse, or apologize. They simply recorded battle air, desert light, and the exact minutes a commander preserved dignity where death was the only equitable distribution. Their sentences stacked like sandbags against revision. Sergeant Glenn Porter, retired, wrote, "She jumped first after the mine, last to leave the rally point, carrying the wounded. I bowed, not to rank, but because she held our whole unit's dignity when mine collapsed." Throats tightened, reading it. Not deification, corroboration from edges of death, a leader refusing pedestals, choosing shelter. In South Florida, a Kandahar veteran with PTSD faced a camera, ticks sharp, eyes sharper. "My daughter asks about role models. I say Moreland every time. No perfection, only presence. In rubble, she pulled me out without asking my name. No music underscored it. Weight traveled on its own." In a courtroom sorting honor from entitlement, such voices became bedrock, not garnish. An ex-SEAL, media shy, sent 3 handwritten paragraphs. "Wounded leg, she bandaged me under fire. I told her, 'Don't save me. I won't be saved by a woman.' She didn't answer, never let go till medics came. I'm not making amends. I'm acknowledging survival belongs to the person I insulted. They said Moreland was cold, iron. These stories didn't decorate her. They built her, rough bricks stacked, so the wind could not tip them. No slogans required, no shields of reputation. She wasn't defended by myth. She was surrounded by those she once lifted. Coverage came, neutral and spare. Conservative outlets couldn't dismiss soldiers speaking in their own unforgiving dialect. Their letters shut debate with one unsanded sentence: "If justice will not stand beside Moreland, justice has already fallen." Day 13 arrived. Benches stopped being seats. They became planks in a bridge no longer bearing polite weight. Balance ceased to matter. Truth asks for presence, not symmetry. First witness, Lieutenant Frederick Hale, white, 6 years with Kincaid in admin, clean record, average reviews. Asked, "Were you told to ignore misconduct?" His throat clicked, then shattered. "We were ordered to look away." Glass broke without sound. The judge asked for documents. An internal memo dated November 18, 21. "Unstable behavior report, not for disclosure," was read. A line sat on the page like a scar. "Kincaid is dangerous, but useful. Keep him controlled." No italics necessary. The system had annotated itself. Prosecutors sought more. Messages between commanders. After argument, the judge released 3 threads. Small but hot as filings, under friction. The shortest text 3 days before the funeral. "Let him rough the brass if he wants, keeps them in line." The courtroom didn't scream. Punctuation did. Each period hit like a gavel the verdict hadn't reached yet. Then came the unprecedented. From the gallery, State Police Commissioner James O'Connor stood, not subpoenaed, not scheduled. "Permission to address," he said, voice carrying stones, "not as an official, as a man who let a broken machine run. I read complaints. I let drawers keep them. I don't ask forgiveness. See it clearly. One officer pulled a gun, but a whole system racked the slide." The room held still, as if bracing weather. The left door opened. No cue, no escort. It was his turn. Kincaid rose. No bow, no remorse. Suit razor pressed, as if from a gala, not federal custody. Each step challenged definition, not merely decorum. He scanned faces down to infrastructure, hands uncuffed. An attorney started to warn, then stopped. Procedure would sound comical now. "You want truth?" Kincaid said, voice flat, syllables ground like salt on a wound. "Listen carefully. I'm not your made-for-television monster, not a sacrificial villain to sponge guilt. I'm your perfect product, silence promoted, ethics coded to dodge reality." The room's metronome became a juror's tapping nail, audible as judgment. "Don't act righteous, Howard Eichern," he told the box. "I detained black men to balance numbers, budgeted juvenile detention to secure elections. This machine runs on quiet consent. I merely named it out loud." A reporter's pen slipped. Juror 9's brow folded. Less anger, more recognition of private complicity. Don't call me wrong, Kincaid snapped, sensing pushback. When you've been quiet for decades, spare me outrage at strip-searched kids and deported mothers. Where were you? His voice didn't fray, it aimed. He drove the blade precisely into moral pretense. No one met his eyes. The back row juror shook, hand over mouth. Then a sob escaped. Small, volcanic, uncoached. Kincaid's lip curled. Hit the pus pocket, did I? He sneered. If I go to prison, this America comes with me. Not because I'm heroic, but because I'm a mirror. Everyone hated the accuracy stuffed inside the venom. The juror cried, remembering a blank vote, a waved-off complaint, a practiced not enough information. The judge moved to intercede. Kincaid raised his hand. Theatrical, priestly. He'd already ceded collapse into the court's mask. Sentence me to 10-20 life, he hissed. When you condemn me, you condemn the myth that you're better than your past. You're not better, only better at cover-ups. Control rooms didn't cut the feed. Hashtag bar I, fam guilty bloomed. Not to praise him, but to puncture the fragile wall called I'm not part of it. Yes, he exhaled, I'm guilty. Not alone. That's why I'll sleep better than you. No applause, no rebuttal. He hadn't begged. He'd cursed the room, venom as benediction. The silence belonged not to victors, but to those who failed while trying to keep marble unchipped. Masks slid off cheeks. The clerk's shoes clicked. Ritual drumbeats toward judgment. No cues, no whispers. The moment felt cupped by a larger hand. Silence offered, not enforced. The foreman stood, paper steady, eyes fractured by a long career. He didn't look at defendant, witness, or peers. He looked into an invisible valley, as if reading farewell to an era. We, the jury, sentence Brett A. Kincaid to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. No sobs, no fists, no cheers, only a laugh, rough as gravel. Kincaid laughed, not defeated or deranged, vindicated that the farce finally admitted itself. He rose slowly, eyes like an old blade, still capable of cutting. In the end, guns don't kill, he spat. Fear kills everyone. No answer could hold both rightness and rot simultaneously. The trembling people saw wasn't in Justice's text, but in the hand now, forced to hold it. He'd been sentenced, the stains remained. Heads bowed, neither grief nor respect, more like funerals for illusions, degree framed and grant funded. General Moreland stared forward, eyes far, touching an unfinished memory beyond this room's fluorescent honesty. A boy, 8, the funeral's question asker, sat in back. What is that man doing? Had become the nation's verdict because it asked meaning before punishment. She glanced over, offering no answer. Actions would answer for them both. Kincaid was led away. No waves, no closed eyes. As the door shut, the courtroom became a crypt. The gavel didn't strike wood. It struck belief. Standing is reflex for believers. No one stood. This wasn't a trial. It was a funeral for an era that thought justice drove itself home. A scrap of paper appeared on the cemetery wall. 4 trembling words in black ink. I turned my back. Anonymity made it contagious. Within 3 days, hundreds arrived, carrying paper and guilt, notes brief, crossed out, tear-stained. People posted, then faced forward, refusing backward glances, as if relearning how to bow to truth. A 9-year-old in a red shirt wrote, I don't know why adults must relearn honoring heroes. Beside it, I'm a history teacher. I never taught Moreland because I feared the why. Together they became Requiem. A silver-haired Louisianan stood 5 hours by the central stone, then taped a line at the gate. Sorry, I clapped his promotion. Thin as a blade, piercing metals that once clinked on men like Kincaid. Those who'd served under him came quietly, no schedules, no groups, adding slips. Past midnight, a masked officer posted. We weren't silent from ignorance, but fear of seeing ourselves. The air around the note cooled. No rebuttals, Truth from shadows weighs more than podium polish. By day 5, architecture students raised a hollow steel frame, 3 meters tall, wind-threading apology notes through its core, recycled panels from detention gates. Steel that once caged innocence now held confessions. People called it the apology wall. No decree, just whispers. Not a monument for forgiveness, an archive proving justice sometimes begins where we admit our private guilt. Moreland gave no speech, took no photos. From the trees, people spotted her holding one blank slip, white, unposted. Her message wasn't for paper. It would be lived, muscle, and schedule instead of marble. Notes multiplied. Fountain pen, pencil, sometimes blood. I believed him once. I taught his model, rain-blurred ink. Custodians paused each morning to read. None removed anything. Memory worked like a slow river, carving. The wall shifted shame into awareness. Wrong isn't only vertical, it's collective when we stand still. Clap convenience, avert discomfort. No tours, no placards. This wasn't for sightseeing, only for learning how to bow. As pages yellowed, a quieter quake rolled through campuses. Her name, not stamped or street signed, entered syllabi like a fracture, forcing students to feel foundations wobble where they'd trusted permanence without inspection. The National Strategic Officer Academy led first. Week 8's title, not because she was a general, but because she didn't draw. Bold letters, no exclamation. The hall fell silent as screens lit. No birth dates, no ribbon readings. A 12-second clip, Moreland standing, eyes on a child, hands still. No persuasion, no defense. That restraint halted a nationwide collapse. Why did she do nothing? Silence taught. A student asked, "Are we learning to handle weapons or ourselves?" No answer necessary. Training shifted. From reaction drills to consequence comprehension, not legend, boundary, the last line before institutional freefall. At the State University of Constitutional Order, students staged a reconstruction. No scripts, roles chosen, juror, counsel, witness, onlookers. They built court in a glass-walled square. Strangers watched honesty bruise and mend in public. No clapping afterward, only stillness, as if they'd been judged. The Federal Strategic Policy Institute labeled Moreland a boundary case. When an institution forces one person to carry morality, what fails? Controversy forced a 3-day forum. Media asked for her closing statement. She sent one line. "If I had to speak, I wouldn't have risen from that funeral." No flourish, only refusal stronger than podiums ever are. She didn't need heroic framing. She needed remembrance, compelling questions. Why did a general face the system's full cowardice alone? Meanwhile, Kincaid's name shrank by action, not proclamation. Students inserting one subversive slide. His image beside, "Not all we teach deserves to stay." Silence followed. When the professor ignored it, the class walked out together. A minute-long clip spread with homage not in our syllabus. Quiet. Hard as granite. In Chicago's military library, a staffer declined restoring his mold-damaged manuscript. "Some things deserve to rot," she said. 30 universities dropped him from required reading. Syllabi changed with no trumpets, just edits. No stamps, no boulevards for Moreland. Her name appeared in lecture slides, theses, crisis ethics diagrams. At a DOJ conference, an old Kincaid clip began. The room clapped, not approval, shut down. "We need a new representative." No objections. The agenda moved on, lighter. Education writes people into books when they wake sleepers. Moreland entered not as heroine, but as a rest's sign, the measure that forces new rhythm. Her name became a verb, how to stand and not betray yourself. Quietly, the Federal Police Headquarters Honor Board showed a gap. Kincaid's bronze square gone. A new inscription, "Force is not authority." No ceremony. A maintenance tech's Reddit post, "A clean void beats filthy honor," trended. Users cross-cut his sanctimonious interviews with trial leaks. Former fan pages flipped, owners deleting, apologizing, or vanishing altogether. Public forgiveness was scarce, not for error, but for hiding behind it. A cafe server withheld a spoon from Kincaid's former media aide. We don't serve utensils to men who ordered quotas on kids. Tables emptied around him. No confrontation, just air refusing to share a legacy. In a high security school, students rebutted stability through fear, his doctrine. A first year's 4 lines went viral: stand beside me, not beneath me. If our system taught otherwise, it must relearn. The piece became a manifesto without an author. Inside prison, inmates requested transfer away from Kincaid. One ex-cop refused quotas years ago, now, finally, breathing unshared air. At the National Policy Bureau archive, his official portrait hung upside down, glass cracked. Asked why, a supervisor said, "Leave it that way." In conversations, people avoided his name, speaking only of consequence. A memo hit departments: revoke medals, retrieve recognitions, purge references from honor system database. No moral essay, just not aligned with public trust. Clerks processed it like trash day, necessary, unceremonious, collective relief. At an Eastern academy, his bust vanished. In its place, bare concrete tin plaque. No longer represents us. A cadet's clip, empty pedestal, morning light, drew 10 million views. Purification without pyrotechnics, only absence. Websites scrubbed his quotes, councils, institutes, training centers. When a professor accidentally cited him, the auditorium's heavy silence forced a restart. A streaming platform pulled his documentary, no longer meets community standards. Online, users spliced his iron-hated sermon against empty memorial frames. Commentary unnecessary, the past unspooled itself. Even the federal prison's inbox filled with veterans' emails. No threats, just cold clarity. No forgiveness. I marched under his flag. I burn it now. It's unclean. We don't hate. We refuse representation by a man who trampled honor. Alumni petitioned to remove his signature from diplomas. The board replied, "Understood." No reply from prison needed. Silence wasn't concealment, it was agreement. His appeal reached the Supreme Military Court, summarily rejected. The Chief Justice wrote, "This sentence addresses a doctrine, governance by fear." From then on, punishment wasn't about a man. It was about dismantling a mechanism that draped cowardice in discipline's jacket. A byline-less essay spread. We're not appealing the verdict, but the belief that once trusted him. Posters, shirts, seminar doors carried that line. A tech company erased past ads featuring him. No backlash necessary. No one dared present him as a governance model. Financial ledgers moved faster than editorials. Pensions and allowances terminated unanimously in 2 hours. Not regulation breach, but breach of public trust. One line of code excised his name from disbursements. Budgetary silence, correcting a funded illusion. A guard slid the notice on his tray. No eye contact. Keys called him Inmate 739 now. On a policy podcast, a former cabinet advisor said, "Silence engraves his name in minus signs." Clip went viral. To dismantle a false symbol, stop calling him a symbol. A rehab unit he'd funded was renamed the Moreland Wing. 8,000 signatures, a quiet plaque, a 19-second splice online. No narration, old ribbon cut, new sign. The internet nodded. No need to smash, just return names to rightful owners. Removal became purification, cold, precise, embedding deeper than slogans ever could. People realized cancellation wasn't an ending. It was a generation refusing to bargain with cruelty in uniform. No one declared Hasker era over. They spoke only of outcomes when they needed a reference. At Denver's Federal Police Memorial Hall, his photo space repainted, shades slightly off like a scar that refuses makeup. A teenager wrote, "Sometimes silence is how justice exhales," in the guest book. An A4 taped briefly. "A face once hung here that isn't worthy to be seen." It was removed, images multiplied. Copies appeared at counters, classrooms, gates. No signatures, no investigations, no defenders. Journalism students filmed the erasure. A retired guard cried on camera. I thought I protected order. I was protecting silence for wrongdoing. The quote went everywhere. First confession from inside the machine. A Texas exhibit tried archival, not honorary. Overnight, captions were hacked, removed for not representing. The system shut down. Press releases omitted his name. Neutrality looked like complicity in grayscale. Inmates shifted beds away from his block. Someone scratched, "Leaders aren't those who terrify, but those people choose to follow," into a stone table. No one scrubbed it. One transfer happened, unexplained. A leaked clip showed Kincaid turning his face from the carving. Social media needed only that still frame. Punishment sometimes means no one wants your company. Moreland said nothing. No approval, no objections, because this wasn't a duel. It was a system's self-reckoning. His erasure didn't satisfy her. It confirmed collapses can happen without gunfire, when mouths stop repeating a name. Lessons began with voids, not perpetrators first, absence first. A USC seminar paused when an elderly professor praised him. The entire hall stood, no shouting. The clip, the stand-up lesson, drew millions. History spoke without footnotes. At an appreciation ceremony, the announcer hesitated at his name. "Withdrawn," he said, and continued. The live stream spread because detachment sounded like the final nail. Recognition denied breath, not just applause. In his cell, a library book bore a handwritten line. "Your theory didn't save you. Nobody reads it now." No rule broken. When he returned it, the librarian wouldn't accept. Circulation silently halted. A Capitol subway billboard for security heroes became graffiti, an empty square, and beneath it, "Not everyone once displayed deserves display again." Paint crews stopped repainting. Ugly ink remembered better than bronze. Former officers promoted by his doctrine held a closed presser. No longer a model, no longer a man, no longer a value. Internal forums shared it, an unannounced detox, universally understood, mercifully overdue. Kincaid felt it more than heard it. Names vanished from boards, texts, training videos, and whispers. Exclusion didn't need judges. Collective memory simply made room elsewhere, and never invited him back. Deans received hundreds of emails. Remove every quotation. Students filmed his photo coming down. One quick cheer, then silence. Not celebration, but witnessing a last crumble of a man who mistook fear for stature. At the federal memorial ceremony, the second chair, reserved for retired commanders, sat empty. A black strip crossed the plate. A freelancer tweeted the image. "Honor belongs to those who no longer take that seat." Moreland declined every documentary, stage, and headline. She left one letter, plain envelope, addressed only "for those who will continue living." First line cut through the habit of monument making. "I don't want to be a symbol. Symbols erase facts." Leadership syllabi winced. Were they honoring someone or hiding something? At a prestigious academy that once used his lectures, a professor walked in with only her letter. A cadet stood mid-row. He ripped out a notebook labeled "Crisis Control Kincaid" and tossed it. No encouragement, no punishment. Everyone understood. Some texts are discarded for essence, not typos. Retractions hit journals and conferences. A special issue dissolved when 3 studies rested on his ethics. The editor resigned. "We thought he was the system's brain. He was cowardice's rationale." Young veterans sprayed subways with silent symbols and one line. She did not step back. One stencil went over the iron door that once bore his name. A soldier posted, "I served under him." The caption stopped there. The image did the rest. Moreland's letter recalled an unnoticed image, a 12-year-old, daughter of the fallen, saluting alone information, left hand to brow, right hand trembling. "No one told her that kept me standing unarmed," she wrote, in a country drowning in declarations. Her words rang like bare metal, cold, heavy, unbreakable, no trumpet ending. The letter closed simply. "If one day you're at gunpoint, remember I did not step back." Not a dare, a reminder. Standing belongs to anyone brave enough to remain upright when bowing looks prudent. The letter moved to the Federal Strategic Archive. A proposal suggested engraving it at the Pentagon. Debate burned. Compromise cooled it, not the full text. One line beneath the department's motto, neither bow nor press others down. Smaller beneath, if you face a muzzle, remember, I did not step back. No cameras, no ribbon. Young soldiers paused, read, moved on. Understanding often takes a lifetime of straight spines. Stone doesn't echo loudly. The silence around it rings longer and rings cleaner. A week later, the reception corridor's framed photograph changed without order. Security found 4 bolts holding a white board, handwritten in red. No one remembers those who knelt to fear, only those who stood still. A penciled note below. Not everyone is forgotten. Some are erased. In morning exercise, inmates had sketched mocking charcoal frames around Kincaid's face. Sarcastic caption, charge, cowardice with a weapon. The warden forbade erasure. Scrubbing wouldn't wash memory, only polish it cruelly. At the National Security Strategy Council, a young aide urged pulling Kincaid's references. An elderly general balked. Next day, boxes labeled "distorts ethical standard" disappeared into storage. No announcement. Everyone understood. Fractured trust resists patchwork theory. A 38-second clip showed students touring the Pentagon. One read the inscription aloud. A middle-aged man, Kincaid's former secretary, turned his face away. That man remembers and won't stop, the student said. TikTok used her line to soundtrack cowardice across fields. A veteran commented, "We don't need blood now, just courage to call cowardice by name." When debate's noise faded, photos, documents, once powerful faces stripped from walls, one sentence remained. There was a person who did not step back. Stillness became the place a generation learned where to begin. Not because she was protected, but because she never hid. You listening carry your own stories, wounds dismissed, grievances unspoken, moments you stood instead of bowed. Write them. Someone else is still groping toward light. If this moved you, pass it on to those who need reminding that silence can be strength, and one upright spine can shift a system. Support the work if you want more difficult truths told. Not for fame, for volume against drowning noise. If you feel the same, you're part of why we don't step back. Because standing isn't performance, it's maintenance. And maintenance, finally, is how honor survives. Across town, a community college hosted office hours for honor. Veterans, students, and custodians lined folding chairs, reading apologies aloud. No panel, no moderator, just people naming what they'd ignored and promising to notice sooner. A postal worker pinned a note to the apology wall. I delivered subpoenas, but never asked why. He signed only with a route number. Humility traveled farther than outrage, block by block, mailbox to mailbox. In a church basement, a youth choir rehearsed taps on kazoos until their leader switched to silence drills. Stand, breathe, hold. Children giggled, then grew solemn. Stillness, taught early, felt like learning a serious language. A city council quietly issued a one-sentence ordinance. Ceremonial grounds supersede civilian escalation. Debate sputtered online. Practice settled it. When officers walked through gates, they paused automatically, like removing hats entering someone's kitchen. An ethics professor replaced multiple choice exams with witness statements. Students narrated one time they looked away, citing pressures, hierarchies, excuses. Grades were gentle, revelations weren't. Their footnotes read like promises written in present tense. On base, Moreland resumed morning PT, cadence low, matter of fact. Recruits matched her stride, surprised at the mercy inside strictness. Leadership, they realized, was measured in breath counts, not retweets. The track learned a new rhythm. In prison, Kincaid requested a typewriter. The librarian logged device unavailable, though 3 sat idle. Scarcity sometimes protects institutions. Here, scarcity protected memory. Words that once dominated rooms now starved quietly, paperless and ignored. A retired judge mailed her robe to a law school thrift closet with a note, "Give this to whoever answers harder questions." The garment hung like a question mark in cotton and thread. On a podcast, a ranger described honor guards. Our discipline lets families grieve without watching us wobble. The host asked about fear. "We get afraid properly later," he said. "During ritual, only the family's fear matters." A museum installed a glass floor above boot prints cast from the cemetery's lane. Visitors stepped carefully, looking down at frozen strides. A placard read, "Wait," translates, "Step as if someone else must stand here." A Marine mom kept her son's folded flag beside a grocery list magnet. Every morning she touched both, grief and errands kissing. Ordinary strength, squared against performative thunder, outlasted speeches by simply showing up again. The academy canteen adopted quiet hours. Cadets ate without phones, no commentary track. Chefs noticed fewer trays and abandoned mid-meal. Attention, practiced at tables, moved next into field drills like a muscle finally remembered. An old sergeant taped a diagram to the barracks wall. Authority versus control. Lines crossed like lattice. In red, control is louder, authority is heavier. Someone underlined heavier 3 times, then penciled earned. A civic theater staged 12 still men and women, jurors debating without shouting. The audience leaned forward, straining to hear careful honesty. Curtain call was a collective exhale. The playbill listed no character names. Reporters interviewed the boy from the back row, now 9. He shrugged on camera. "I just didn't want her to get pushed." The clip ended there. Enough. Sometimes wisdom fits inside one jacket pocket. A policy analyst mapped the silent cascade, how one refusal altered trainings, budgets, signage, posture. Her white paper didn't trend, but city managers photocopied it into binders that actually got opened. Bureaucracy learned courage by osmosis. At roll call, an officer recited the new ceremonial oath slowly, not from fear of forgetting, but to taste each clause. Colleagues stopped shifting boots. The captain nodded once. Comprehension replaces compliance on its own timeline. An undergraduate capstone titled "Earn Gravity" measured how artifacts anchor behavior. The student concluded, "Objects don't change us. Watching someone value them does." Her advisor wrote, "Defend this sentence for the rest of your life." A bookstore curated a shelf. Not heroes, habits. Titles about maintenance, apology, ritual. The owner placed a small card. "These books don't slap. They hold." Customers smiled like people who found tools instead of slogans. Moreland sent 3 handwritten notes to junior officers. "Protect the tempo." Leave space. Stand where the wind hits first. None mentioned medals, all mentioned timing. Mentorship sounded like drum beats heard behind thick doors. A civic coder released an app that mutes livestream comment feeds during funerals, then reopens them after rites. Downloads spiked. Sometimes guardrails aren't censorship. They're courtesy at scale, a hush coded into software. A photographer archived images of hands. Salutes, folded, trembling, steady. She labeled nothing. Viewers arranged them on a light table, building narratives in quiet. Museums learned that captions can sometimes overtalk what skin already says. Kincaid's former precinct renamed its training room Room of Corrections, not for punishment, but for edits. New recruits read old memos with a red pen. Every margin note felt like a stitch pulling tight. At the apology wall, a janitor laminated a handful of fading slips. "Sun's not the enemy," he murmured, sealing edges. "Forgetting is." He refused to call himself curator. Work badges sometimes hold larger titles. A debate club hosted pro, standing still, con, standing still. The con side argued nuance, the pro side argued line drawing. Judges called it a tie, insisting the question remain open so posture stays awake. A therapist published After Action for Civilians, 5 steps: notice, narrate, normalize accountability, repair, rehearse. No hero chapters, just practice sets. Book clubs discussed page margins more than plot. People liked feeling coached, not dazzled. A barber shop posted a flyer. Veterans, cut free, cadets half. Conversations shifted to rituals interrupted and restored. Clippers hummed like low percussion under stories. Pride stayed seated longer than usual, finishing every sentence. At dawn, Moreland walked the cemetery's edge, boots whispering on dew. She paused where the photo once shattered, then moved on without ceremony. Memory, kept correctly, doesn't demand theatrics. It requests punctual visits. A city bus carried a banner, Force Authority. A teenager snapped a picture, added, Math I'll actually remember, and posted it. The equation traveled farther than lectures, scrawled later on civics quizzes. A librarian created a removed for cause archive, sealed, accessible by petition. Erasure isn't education, her policy began. Context is. Scholars grumbled, communities relieved. The reading room door acquired a softer, more deliberate hinge. A drill instructor placed a metronome on the range table. Recruits fired only on downbeats. Breath synced, hands steadied. Violence has tempo, he said. So does restraint. The clicks changed accuracy and attitudes. An old precinct mural once showing order through strength was overpainted with chairs, occupied, empty, reserved. In small script, know which is yours. Officers practiced walking past without claiming the wrong seat. A high school civics teacher assigned students to write ordinances with only 12 words. One read, no weapons among honor, no exceptions. The principal framed it beside the attendance board. Teen brevity felled bureaucracy. A chaplain taught recruits how to carry bad news to doorsteps. He emphasized doorbells, pauses, posture. You can't fix grief, he said, but you can avoid spilling it. Silence nodded like a congregation. A veteran started a small grant for honor logistics, replacement frames, extra flags, urn carriers. The fund didn't trend, ceremonies stopped breaking. People learned that care budgets outlast outrage budgets almost every time. A mock trial team rewrote objections as questions. Objection assumes dignity is negotiable. Basis? Judges let it stand for class only. Undergrads left smiling, carrying sharper instincts disguised as courtroom jokes. An urban planner redrew parade routes to pass schools and nursing homes. Crowds got quieter, hearts heavier. Reverence in the wild required new signage. Look up, hats off, phones down. Remember why streets were paved. In a grocery store line, a young soldier paid for a stranger's flowers. She didn't explain. The cashier later taped a receipt to the break room wall labeled Field Report, Civilian Theater. A precinct adopted mirror briefings. Officers faced reflective panels while reciting policy. Some rolled eyes, others straightened shirts. Seeing yourself say, no escalation among mourners, proved harder than hearing a captain drone it. A teacher asked students to design memorials for mistakes. One drew an empty stage with a single microphone turned off. The caption, we had enough speeches. The class clapped, then stopped, honoring the design. A county clerk refiled a long missing complaint from a female officer, scanned, notarized, preserved. She wrote an apology in the margin and initialed it. Archival ink, finally, carried weight equal to courtroom timber. A young corporal mailed his academy ribbon back, asking for reissue without signatures tied to Kincaid. The registrar obliged with a sticky note. Corrected. Paper, quietly honest, felt heavier than any podium sentence. Inmates on Kincaid's block created a chess ladder. No one invited him. Strategy without intimidation thrived. The board's silence rejected every old speech about order. He watched pawns ascend like soft revolutions. A senator proposed a Ritual Rights Act, brief, enforceable, protected silence, procession lanes, oath protocols. Lobbyists yawned. Families cheered. The bill's summary occupied one page. For once, clarity didn't ask permission to be law. A behavioral scientist published permission pathways, diagrams of how groups grant harm. The final figure was a door labeled refusal. Inside, a stick figure woman stood, empty hands raised. Legend, general posture, repeat as needed. An art student projected footage of wind moving a half-staff flag onto a blank wall. No sound. The audience cried quietly, embarrassed by tears they couldn't name. The professor grated with a handkerchief. A small-town paper ran obituaries for policies, not people. Here lies discretion unbound. Farewell to unreviewed force. The classifieds offered honor repair, reasonable rates. Gallows humor repaired trust, better than think pieces. Moreland declined an award but attended the luncheon, sitting near kitchen doors. She thanked servers first, then slipped out before dessert. Leadership doesn't require spotlight, it requires exits that leave rooms steadier. At the apology wall, the janitor added a fresh strip of tape to a curling note. Weatherproof, he muttered. A child saluted him without instruction. Two kinds of maintenance nodded to each other. A final message flickered across a late-night stream. If this found you, stand somewhere tomorrow. Quiet, unyielding, useful. The feed ended. The room stayed still. Outside, flags breathed. Inside, spines remembered their work.